Hello and welcome to HatchNOW. I'm Diana Hills. In this episode, we take a closer look at what you can do to ease the impact of lockdown restrictions on your mental health. And is there a new superpower on the rise? A new age of weaponry could see China lead the arms race of the future. But first, petrol prices are at an all-time high. However, with current lockdown situation, many experts are wondering why. Mansour with the story.
Yes, Diana. Petrol prices currently sit at unprecedented highs. We haven't seen prices like this since 2008, which is more than 13 years ago. The current average price of standard unleaded is $1.69, with Greater Sydney being hit the hardest, where standard unleaded is $1.77 per litre.
So, can you tell us why are the prices so high?
Well, oil reserves drying up and a lack of newly found petroleum deposits were once considered the sole reason petrol prices being so high. However, a spokesperson for BP, as early as last month, stated that the price of a pump is impacted by a number of different factors, and these include exchange rates, local operating costs, as well as the country's taxes.
How do we know that we're paying strenuous prices?
Well, Diana, Peter Corey, head of media at the NRMA, said in a press release that the unprecedented price of petrol is currently 86 cents per litre on the wholesale market. And Sydney should be experiencing an all-time low, not a 13-year high during the pandemic. Public outcry, however, has been relatively low, with most of Sydney and New South Wales still stuck in lockdowns and stuck in those 5-kilometre restrictions. In comparison, Diana, the ACCC has reported that Melbourne currently sits at $1.44 per litre, while Brisbane is at $1.42, proving that equality in petrol prices still has a long way to go.
Mansour with that report. According to the Humane Society, 2 out of 3 egg-laying hens are still confined to cramped cages in Australia. So, is this practice still considered ethical? Maria, can you tell us a little bit more about the concerns here?
Well, Diana, there are 2 main types of housing systems for layer hens in Australia. We have the cage-free system, which is a barn, and hens are free to move around and they have more space. But then we have the more popular option, which is the conventional or battery cages, which are wired cages set in rows and are preferred by our farmers due to mass production. However, in a battery cage, each bird has a space less than the size of an A4 paper. So there's really no room for them to move around, flap their wings, or even stretch. According to the RSPCA, over 10 million Aussie hens are suffering in barren battery cages. And having to live in these spaces all their lives, they suffer from a higher rate of osteoporosis due to the lack of bone activity and inability to move.
So it definitely seems that this option is both harmful and unethical, and some could even say just a plain cruel way to house animals. So why are these cages still legal?
It goes all the way back to the 1950s, Diana, when it was first introduced in Australia during the post-war period, where there was a need to cage significant numbers of birds in order to increase egg production and supply. Now, for the first time in over a decade, the National Animal Welfare Standards and Guidelines for Poultry are under review, with over 167,000 people petitioning against the use of these cages. I spoke to Dr. Jed Goodfellow, a senior policy officer at the RSPCA, and he said that now is a critical time as the state and territory ministers decide whether or not to completely phase out the use of battery cages.
Barren battery cages cause the highest rates of disuse osteoporosis, the highest rates of fatty liver disease, and also, of course, extreme behavioural deprivation. Right now is a really critical time because state and territory governments, as we speak, are considering whether or not to endorse the independent panel's recommendations to phase out battery cages.
The challenge remains on whether the panel that moves to ban battery cages in Australia or sees them as a more practical way to house chickens. In the meantime, we'll have to wait and see.
Thanks, Maria. Next up, hypersonic weapons sound like something out of the pages of a science fiction novel, but a new arms race is putting them right around the corner. Layton, what exactly are hypersonic weapons?
Well, Diana, first of all, hypersonic flight occurs at a velocity of 5 times the speed of sound. and is capable of reaching anywhere on Earth within 2 hours. Now, there are two types of weapons currently in development, the hypersonic glide vehicle and the hypersonic cruise missile. They are both powered by advanced engines that use oxygen in the atmosphere for propulsion once they have acquired their target. Also, hypersonic missiles travel at lower altitudes and on different trajectories than traditional long-range missiles, such as ballistics, and are able to maneuver during their flight. This creates a challenge for detection and defense.
Okay, so how are these weapons expected to change the future nature of warfare?
Well, due to the missile's low altitude, terrestrial-based radar cannot detect hypersonic weapons until late in the weapon's flight, decreasing the timeline for decision-makers assessing their response options. On top of this, hypersonic weapons allows an adversary to hit their target at a greater range and at a reduced time. Obviously, he who has this technology will gain a massive advantage, as Dr. Malcolm Davis, a senior analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, tells HatchNOW.
It's a mystery to me why the US just lags behind, because it's so crucial in terms of our ability to project force into the Western Pacific. And we are lagging seriously behind both China and Russia.
So Diana, it seems that hypersonic flight is fast approaching, and we'll just have to wait and see who launches first.
Layton with that report. Now, it's no secret that the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a huge toll on many Australians' mental health. While lockdowns and social distancing strategies are an incredibly important way to protect people's physical health, these measures have a significant emotional impact. Experts are dubbing this lockdown loneliness, and it's on the rise. HatchNOW's Abby joins us. Abby, what exactly are the concerns here?
Well, Diana, a recent study from the Netherlands shows that experiencing persistent loneliness can increase a person's risk of developing heart disease by 20% and type 2 diabetes by 90% within a 5-year period. And now, of course, it's normal to feel lonely from time to time, especially as a result of the lockdowns. However, some of us are at a high risk of problematic loneliness. And these are people aged 18 to 25, people living alone, and those that are unemployed. Now, persistent loneliness can lead to poor mental and physical health, and this may be because of the physiological stress it puts on our body. I was able to speak to Nerali Stratty, who is a counsellor at Catholic Care, about what of her patients have been saying to her.
They completely withdraw. They become to a stage where the normal procedures, even if it was the weekend rather than a day of going to work, they just retreat. They can't even get out of bed.
As you can see, it's really taking a toll on Sydney-siders during this period.
I'm sure that many Australians can definitely relate to this. What are we able to do to take care of ourselves and the people around us?
Well, some common strategies from psychologists include calling up a family member or a friend, going for a short walk, or joining an online group such as a book club or an online fitness group. However, the BMC Public Health have been investigating the potential of acts of kindness as a way to combat loneliness and promote well-being. Now, lockdown is a shared experience. We're all going through it together. So it does give us the opportunity to show kindness and start up a small conversation with someone we might not know as well.
We're social beings, so communication is important. Being able to sort of, even just wave or smile at somebody else in the street. And, you hear beautiful stories of people that live in the street, and making a meal for somebody else that's elderly, dropping that, those connections are just so important.
Now, even before the pandemic, in 2019, the Australian Psychology Society reported that 1 in 4 people experience feelings of loneliness. So I hope that this is something we can keep up long after the lockdown ends. However, I think for now, a simple hello to a passing neighbour or a grocery attendant goes a long way.
Thank you, Abby. And remember, if you or anyone that you know needs help, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14. And that's all we have time for on this episode of HatchNOW. I'm Dinah Hills. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.